Okay, hola, spotters, trollers, covert, saboteurs. Welcome back to Soul Mechanics, and indeed to the main event as regards, I suppose you could say maybe the first season of the channel. I'm thinking that's how I kind of want to wrap this into being that, but what we're doing here with this particular expedition, this, I suppose you could say, culmination of differing stories that all speak to the same happenstance. We're going to make a short series here that is primarily regarding the extremity deprivation experiments and my latest traversal in that regard, which has indeed unlocked what seems to be the culmination and the entirety of the purpose herein, and perhaps what may lead to solutions involving the, more troublesome aspects that we have found in play throughout the investigation. But ultimately, overall, this piece is going to be intending to wrap up this phase of that investigation. As I stated before, it is going to be ongoing in the sense that, we're not going to stop at pointing out to you guys what the trouble is. We're going to go ahead and solve it, and we are going to be successful. We, all of us, together, whether you like it or not. You are in fact being implemented, and it's too late to get out of it. If you are in fact invested in this, and key components that I need to put into play here that need to be kind of values standing at the forefront of your consideration going forward is that, as I said, if you have the interest, if you are invested to any extent in this channel and what we're doing, if it even seems interesting to you in any way whatsoever, it probably is, because it's probably one of the most meaningful things that I've ever seen happen. We're actually trying to address, some of the real issues that humanity has, and find a way to get through the blockades we face together. I know it's not a huge undertaking insofar as regards the channel or what have you. It doesn't appear to be a big deal because we are not backed by, the system that we're in fact battling against. It's like something that you might want to watch out for is when you see like revolutionaries stating that they are indeed fighting against the system, yet they have this enormous pandering following. Chances are it's because they are playing into the system to some extent and indeed being manipulated by it. So, that it should stand as a sort of a positive sign that in fact we are having so much trouble growing here, because we are not being assisted by that what we're trying to break down and dismantle. And we are going to be successful in that regard. It's already happening, which is, as I was saying, the key components that need to be put into play. Factor A that you need to keep in mind is, again, if you have the interest, if you are invested, if you want to see this through, if you want to benefit from this and see others benefit from it truly, genuinely, then I'm going to need for you to pay attention. Of course, one of the primary factors of this training that we're trying to put together here, this device, this skill set or mechanism, the machinery of soul mechanics, is going to be regarding your ability to maintain your attention span, to actually pay attention to things that are important, most especially considering that the most prevalent hazard, or the biggest blockade we face is, this wrench thrown into our machinery by this ANE, this opponent factor that we're speaking to, the problematic malfunctioning programming in humanity, whatever may have caused it, whatever it may actually be. I'm seeing as being this trouble area in our programming, essentially. I can't define it any better than to say it's just a busted value set that is turning us against ourselves, turning us against each other in so many different ways. And we're going to try to point out it in so many different, we're going to try and make an example out of it here. Firstly, I'm going to try and make an example of what it is and how it works through myself and the problems that are occurring with me, that it has, in a way, it's been affecting me personally. That's a story aspect. And then secondarily, the interactive portion of this in its entirety is going to be wherein I make an example of how we can combat it through you. So, again, please do pay attention. And I'd like to make note also that the entirety of this, at least this particular series, and then apparently most everything that's happening, at least in proximity of it, is all playing into what amounts to one gigantic spotter's challenge. So it's not just the thumbnail this time, it is in fact every last little thing, every factor of this, most particularly the fact that we've been addressing songs directly. Anybody involved with the initiative page, especially from the outset of it, will be familiar with us having began the whole spot casting social experiment via dedicated songs of the day. And of course I'm a very musically oriented person. I really get into music, bands, songs, videos. And so we've kind of formed a schematic around that, and we're going to be using songs, most especially the song we're addressing, or two songs we're addressing in this video particularly, or these videos, as tools, utilities by which to, I guess you'd say, delivery mechanism, in a manner of speaking, songs in and of themselves. So that's going to be one of the values that, you might see if you got your eyes open, if you're paying attention, if you can manage to remain not distracted by these distractions, these obstacles that are thrown into your observation all over the place. You've effectively been conditioned to ignore things that are in fact ultimately good for you, and this distraction mechanism is being reinforced by this instant gratification kind of a whatever makes you feel good in the moment is what must be best for you sort of mentality. You're going to need to face some serious challenges and actually undergo some serious changes in order to benefit long term from what we're trying to accomplish here. In fact, we are going to be needing to change the entire structure of humanity as a species in order to even so much as fucking survive. And I do apologize for those of you that have been casually engaging, but you have the interest to get involved, but maybe not today. But in fact, where I've been saying that we are running out of time, we are in fact officially out of time now. So we're gonna have to throw down here and see how it happens, see what goes down. But do be somewhat faithful, I suppose I could say, in the endeavor in and of itself. That is to say, have faith in the plan, because indeed we already have completed this. In fact, we have several other offshoots and outlets, including a big deal challenge that was with another channel, which is going to be representative of our opponent in the most obnoxiously outrageous and just fascinating ways. It's all set up pretty well. All of that's filmed. It's all ready to go. We just, for unknown mysterious reasons, we were unable to post that as yet, but of course that'll become clear when we do in fact post it right on time. Anyways, from here I'm going to cut into a video I already cleared, the beginning of a video I already filmed, wherein I am actually still in the experimental phase, and I'm speaking to some of the things I found in it, which have been expounded upon thereof. This is the future, and much has happened since then, but that'll kick us off and give us a gist of what's going on in this particular video. Anyways, thank you for attending. Most especially thank you to everyone who sticks through to the end of it. I will see you there. Hola, spotters. Welcome back to Soul Mechanics. We are at this point on the final the ending of this month's deprivation experimentation phase, and we're landing it right now, and this is what has been acquired throughout the course of it. This video is intending to express what has been kind of discovered or exacted some point. And in fact, as it happens, synchronicity playing in, which we went wild. Sweetie Cheeks and I made our video last night, technically kind of this morning, well into this morning. Like, I'm running very late. I need to make that evident, so everything is going to be very rushed and kind of blasting, because I'm at the very last minute I have available to get this done, and I need to do it. This is a good one, so please bear with me. Just seriously fucking pay attention here. Synchronicity was like on full blast. We were in several drifts that were happening all at the same time. Like, every single little thing was a synchronicity that would span out forward and backward into the past retroactively. Like, this one really fucking accomplished something. And I mean, as awful a situation as it feels as though I am in fact experiencing right now, as I was saying, as it happens, there is something that transpired via synchronicity, as it seems, in my personal life that just really kind of drilled in and hammered home the purpose, in effect, the intended purpose for this particular video, in like dramatically graphic fashion. Like, I am very, very, I got hurt by, like, actually very seriously hurt by this happenstance, and frustrated and very angry, and I'm just, at the moment, I'm in, like, a very bleak kind of a place wherein I'm actively plotting out, you know, kind of schematics for, you know, essentially happenings, like event plotting going into the future of what I would like to exact upon everybody that are just severely damaging and hurtful and just outright cruel. Like, I'm in a very bad place wherein obviously I'm not going to go about hurting people, but right now the way I feel, it's like I kind of want to hurt people for no fucking reason at all. So I need for you to understand that the place that I'm at now, where I am coming from with this particular message, is kind of like, you could say, the dark side, the shade. This is to be regarded an important, a very important delivery, please, a fucking public service announcement. Take this into consideration. So, to cut down to the, like, nitty-gritty nuts and bolts, you know, pertinent factors of everything that we're working with here, just to get to the damn point of it as quickly as is possible, I would like to have a very serious discussion with all of you about Limp Bizkit. Now, I'm certain that there must be a small handful, at least, of you out there who can kind of vaguely recall this band having existed in some, you know, seemingly relevant capacity in the distant past. You know, myths and legend of Limp Bizkit once was. But there might be some of you who can actually recall a few of their songs. There's one song in particular I'd like to talk about. But first, as a tangent, like a tangent segue to that, an attachment, you could say, I'd like to mention, and I guess an honorable mention, you could say, to a newer band that did a song. It's a band called I Prevail, which, that's not really, I mean, it's cool and all, I see what it means, I like it, but it's not a really very well thought out title for a band. I mean, that wouldn't even be like a good movie, or even a chapter for a book. Sorry, it's a terrible title. I wouldn't use it. But I mean, I can understand what it's supposed to be meaning, and I respect it deeply, because in fact, this band is pretty useful, man. They're operatives for sure. It's just they're kind of, at the very least, they're depicting themselves as being handicapped to some extent. But obviously, that can play out, you know, in considerably favorable fashion, should they play it correctly. And I, of course, at this point, I've got to wonder if they actually have a plot in play, because it's becoming somewhat increasingly evident to me as we move along that perhaps there are, in fact, like, no other people that actually even understand what I'm doing, let alone are, you know, in a position to actually do this themselves. So it's kind of what I want to get at here, but the music's important. So, I mean, we're going to use that as the delivery mechanism because it's sound and it works. Now, the mention for I Prevail, they did a song in what is the first song I ever heard by them, and I've listened to it like a few times before, but it was not until I was in the ether in this experimental phase that I could actually fucking hear it. And what I hear is a man saying simply, he says it at one point in the song. The song is regarding depression. It's a song about having, you know, diagnosed clinical depression and experiencing the resulting fallout of that, and ostensibly the kind of effects that it has long term, seemingly permanently, incurably. I guess people are thinking of it as being upon your personal life and how you in fact function and maneuver and negotiate in general. Like, it's kind of trying to get across the actual feeling of being depressed and how it should be taken, you know, into account and seriously considered by people addressing those who are suffering from it, I guess, is the point of the song, because I mean it really gets that across. What he says at one point in this song, he says, I mean, I need for you to hear this too. Please try to actually see what's presented. He says, I say I feel hopeless. They give me medicine. I say I feel hopeless. They give me medicine. And yeah, I'm looking at you, man. Like, I'm very disappointed in him having to say that, having to make an attempt at making that point as though it's not just common sense, clearly evident to anybody who comes across the very consideration of it. Like, dude, what are we doing? Yeah, I'm not doing this. My shit's running smoothly. I mean, I've got all cylinders firing, top, 6th gear, and pushing. Like, the initiative is rocking and rolling. So, I mean, I really don't have any official or like standardized particular personal managerial training or supervisory training from some other, considered expert manager or supervisor. Like, I'm not, for all intents and purposes, it should be expected that I would not be very good at doing this. And in fact, I'd have to agree with that assessment, because it is in fact something I had never done before, just kind of jumped on a whim, with really no idea as to what the fuck I was even going to try to do in the first place. Yet, I am in fact producing results that are just 101% effective in every potential way that I actually decide for them to be, and are functioning in the lives of just thousands of people at the moment who are going out in the world, and they're extending this directive via the actions that they take as a result of the directions I put in play, the values that I have sort of, you could say, installed. Megan would like to point out that the values are in fact already present. Again, everything that could happen is happening in the brain. It's just a matter of what parts are lighting up for what reason, most particularly a matter of what associations or relationships are developed. So, I mean, I'm not installing the value, but I like to think of it as that I'm in fact activating these values, though sort of, I'm putting pointers, you could say cues in play that effectively act as primers, in the sense that they point you towards a certain value that perhaps you're not seeing. And when you do see it, and that lights up in conjunction with the other values that are set in play, it forms a kind of a circuit that creates what you could effectively regard as being a program that informs your decision making from that point forward. And not only is this exceptionally effective whilst nobody even sees it happening, but I can personally guarantee you that it is in fact permanently effective. So, I mean, once you've managed to kind of acquire some of these values that I'm giving you or activating for you, and once they've kind of slipped by your immediate awareness, as they always do, they're there for good. There's no getting rid of it. There's no changing your mind on the matter. You are effectively activated and operative. So, anybody that's watching that has in fact paid any attention, even if you've like idly watched and just kind of heard it, some of these values are going to have slipped in regardless. You just have to be around them. You have to be, I guess you could say, exposed to them, and it's that simple. So I'd like to thank you all for being present at all in the first place, and I'd very sincerely like to thank you all for actually taking part in this, what currently amounts to somewhat of a social experiment, but a very good one with very, honorable and noble purpose behind it, that I do promise you we are not going to allow for any bad to come of it. We're not going to ever allow for even, we're absolutely not going to incur any damages, but we are most certainly going to, in fact, ensure that damages are not incurred collateral and on collateral, that is. So, this is purely intended to be absolutely positive for everybody involved, and I mean, given that I can, in fact, go about producing results to that effect, I will promise you that I am going to be watching and ensuring that all of you are protected to some extent or another. I mean, there are some things I can't handle immediately, but I'm going to ensure that you're all right and that nothing bad comes. Like, I need for you guys to understand that there's no, like, I mean, anybody would say this, right? But I'm pretty sure you guys should be aware of the fact that I am, like, honest to a fault at this point, and I'm very sincere in everything I say, and I'm telling you there are no, like, ulterior motives here. The intention experiments, and in fact the spot casting itself, those were the ulterior motives. So I mean, they're already out in the open. There's nothing. There are no more surprises. And by the way, we're still collecting artists, people. Like, I don't know why you're not getting on the ball there, but it is kind of like important. Like, I mean, obviously you don't think of it as being important because you have yet to witness the resulting consequences of having collected these people and placed them in the initiative. So, I mean, maybe you could try actually collecting some people and placing them and kind of see how that turns out, at what point you will be made glaringly aware of all the fucking awesomeness you have been totally fucking missing out on, seemingly because you're just, like, lazy, I guess. Like, what's the problem here, man? People get up on your feet, up and at 'em, rise and shine, fight or fucking die. Let's get to it. So get to the actual purpose here. 12 minutes in, I do apologize. I'm already running too late. This sucks, fucking asshole. Like, you know, Mom, I'm mad at my mom. I want you all to know. So, just a factor, a value to put in place so you have an idea of what may be going on. I want you guys to be informed, even though it's, you know, meaningless to you. It is, in fact, informing my pursuit of this and how I feel about the particular message that I have, you know, been delivered and intend to deliver. So, you might recall Limp Bizkit having done a song and what the dude Durst, Fred Durst, I think his name is, he says, you know, if the day keeps going this way, I just might break somebody's face tonight, right? And I mean, really, that kind of a silly song. It's just, I guess it's kind of like a rapper show-off kind of thing. Like, I'm a badass, even though he's like a suburbanite white boy who has like no street cred whatsoever. Likely has never actually experienced anything that could possibly be considered dangerous to any extent, and therefore has really no values in play that should be informing him, you know, to the effect of, hey, I'm deserving of the respect attended to someone who's, you know, tough and hardcore in some way or another. Like, basically, he's just a dumbass, kind of probably stoner white boy who got into rap and like, you know, he had a good idea. Limp Bizkit, I think, was a pretty good band, actually, in the sense that their music was good. They were, you know, kind of one of the first peoples to be mixing it up, aside from, like, Rage Against the Machine, of course, way back there, but, you know, mixing up metal and rap, which is a particularly cool idea. It works in most cases. It was pretty cool. Their music was, you know, attendable, listenable. It was available, or I'm not really sure what the word is. It was reasonably worth listening to, you know, to some extent. And that's not the point. Who gives a fuck, right? I mean, they're dead and gone. I don't even know how long. I don't know if they might still be around. I don't know. Guesswork. I haven't paid attention to them, so they must not exist, right, atheists? I mean, if I'm not being shown Limp Bizkit operating effectively on the stage immediately in front of me, like, at all times, then I have to jump to the fucking scientific conclusion that they in fact do not exist and likely never have. Fred Durst never said what I'm suggesting he did. He couldn't have, because he's just a figment of my religious propagandic imagination. And that's called skeptical, rational thinking, delivered via scientism. Yay. Sorry. That was a fucking waste, right? I found it kind of funny. Hope you guys like it too. Most especially the atheist trollers out there. Come say something to me. Talk. Go ahead and respond to me in a troller fashion. See what happens. I am so looking forward to that. Okay, so anyway, yeah, just kind of stupid. It's worthless, right? But, I mean, then if you look at it, like, I mean, got eyes on my head. I see what's happening. And ultimately, one of the primary, I suppose you could say, a primary, like, premise of the entirety of this channel and this endeavor is to determine, you know, ostensibly, like, as in to show you guys so that you actually know, and like, you're not just kind of considering it a possibility or even like going so far as to actively believe in it, but that you in fact know for certain that not only is the world alive and aware of your presence, that it is watching you, that you are being essentially recorded, and in fact, ultimately, it is the very nature of that recording in and of itself that defines your existence in the first place. So So I mean, it's not like it's watching you with the camera. Like, you are the camera. That's what makes you happen. But I mean, we'll get to that later. That's a tricky one. But Megan and I just covered it last night, so maybe we'll put it in the next video. Anyways, not only is the world watching you and alive and conscious and aware of your presence, but the world is in fact speaking to you. Now, I mean, we can say it's the world. Personally, I have ideas as to what is actually speaking to you through the world. But again, as I've said before, those are the beliefs that I am very likely to never share with you guys, because firstly, you'll think that I'm crazy, and then second, when you actually come to realize that it's likely the case, you will be crazy, and it's not a good place to be. Like, I live in a hell zone. My perspective on what's happening is pretty bleak. So, I mean, change my mind, peeps. Show me that we can do better. I mean, obviously nothing's going to change that consideration, but show me that it's worth it, man. Show me what you can do. Stop being so fucking distant and detached and like cool guy in the corner who doesn't need to care about anything. Jump in the fucking conversation, grab the ball and play the fucking game, please. Anyways, so he says, if the day keeps going this way, I just might break somebody's face tonight. And I mean, what at first glance seems just pointless and even inauthentic, disingenuous kind of, I don't know, filler statement for the song, upon inspection, further inspection, like seeing it with the eyes of a spotter and noticing that, in fact, it might be the world speaking through him to you in some fashion, and so you're going to consider what it's saying and the potentiality of the values involved, and what you'd come to notice that ultimately, I mean, first thing you're likely to notice, especially if you're like my sort, someone who's like me, is that it is in fact like very exceptionally poetic, this line. Like, it's very well written. I mean, think about it. If the day keeps going this way, I just might break somebody's face tonight. It's perfect. Like, it tells a whole fucking story in that, and it's just, it's so simple, but it's delivered in such a perfected, schematic sort of a fashion. Like, it's really, if the day keeps going this way, the day keeps going this way, I just might break somebody's face tonight. Like, you get me? It's something like, I probably wouldn't write that in any poetry, but I mean, if somebody else wrote it in poetry, I'd certainly appreciate it as being what it is, which is rhetorically sound, and in fact, just heavily deliverable. Like, there's something really cool about that verse, if you actually, or that line, if you actually think about it, which, you know, is getting further into the point wherein you can inspect a little deeper. And in inspecting a little deeper from my perspective with the values that I have in play, you know, insistent, positioned in my my deck, as it were, my system, what I see is nearly the entirety of the message I want to try to deliver here, wherein I want to say, kind of to get us to it from where we are, people who message me, like on Messenger or even via text, some of you have my phone number, when you message me and I respond immediately, or within a minute or so, however long it takes, I get right back to you. I am, in fact, I'm not like just somewhere off doing nothing, you know, I am not ever just kind of loose and free. When you guys message me and I message immediately back as though I actually have like space and time to be doing such a thing, I am in fact simultaneously conversing with at least 20 and up to maybe 100 or so people at the same time, and I am in fact responding as immediately as is possible to every one of them. I move very, very fast. I've broken several phones by doing this, in fact. But, well, I broke the operating systems, not really. The phone just kind of shut off because it had nothing to work with. But, so I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that I'm always behaving. That is, I'm always inhabiting a certain ideal. I'm always presenting a certain measure of my extension. And I mean, I very much dislike, like I began this video talking about how I'm angry and how I feel like damaging people, and of course it segued us to the song that we're working with. But I don't like to, I don't want to, and I try my damnedest to never go about, presenting negativity to anybody, treating anybody poorly, being, shitty, down, kind of hurtful to anybody. I don't ever present a negative anything to people. From time to time, I will go about kind of, slacking in that regard to the tone of telling you guys when I'm not feeling so well or when something's wrong, but there's always going to have been a reason for that. Like, I need for you to know that, and I kind of also need for certain emotional values to have been attached to the knowing of that for purposes that usually come into play like much later on. But I mean, it's purposeful. That is what I'm trying to say ultimately, is that obviously, as I stated, I try to refrain from ever being negative to people, which can turn out to be a hell of a fucking dramatic mistake, actually, or at least just a very tricky play, because on one hand, that indeed means that if I am encountering that many people on a regular basis, then I am effectively being positive to all of them, right? Like, I'm going around being positive to people all over the place all the time, and some people notice this, and in noticing this, they in fact come to realize that I'm a very loyal, trustworthy, and determined person, that I am in fact a friend and family to anybody who accepts that I am just loyalty and honor are at the top of my list for things that are to be held in the highest regard. That's what I care about presenting, and that's what I wish to share. So I've got a lot of people out there that, like, Megan said her dad told her when they were younger, he said, you won't understand this in high school. She was in high school at the time. But when you get out of high school, if you can count the number of true friends you have on one hand, you should consider yourself to be exceptionally lucky. And this, of course, is true to some extent. In many cases, it's just like a common sense understanding, like the true, measurably loyal and considerate friends in your life that matter, that care about you, and that you are, ordained the task of caring for, people that are actually attached to you in a realistic manner. It's kind of rare. It's a unique experience, most especially in the internet age. However, provided that we have this tool of the internet in play, and provided that I have also managed to kind of break the rules in the sense that I've figured out how to sort of, get directly to a person and actually get through the screen and sort of present my emotions, present seemingly like a simulated, a virtual first-hand experience. I've learned to communicate with people via these messenger apps and whatnot in a way that comes across as being almost like a face-to-face interaction. And then, of course, I've got a lot of people who I talk to via the face chat thing a lot, and those are kind of the business partners. Those are the people that are helping plot this thing out and actually, accounting for certain schematics that are to be added to it or insisted from it. Like, they're involved in the structuring of everything that's going to be happening in the near future, which is kind of what I'm needing to sort of warn you here about what's going to be happening. Now, if oh god, stupid me. Sorry, I'm really out of it. Like, I'm sleep deprived. I'm in bad shape. So please don't get. I'm gonna fuck up. I apologize. Sorry, shit. I don't want to jump cut. I think it's stupid. I don't like it. So you're gonna see the fuck up. Fucking deal with it. So what I forgot, or just now I had forgotten, I was talking about. If I'm positive to all these people, I mean, I've earned their trust. I've earned their loyalty. So effectively, I mean, I've got way more people than I could count on. Well, I've got literally hundreds of true friends that I consider to be amongst the most important factors in the entirety of my life. People that I love so fucking much. If they stopped working with me via the internet, I'd probably lose my shit and cry about it. I have a lot of people that I genuinely consider to be true friends and family, and in fact, every one of you that's watching are possessing of that capacity should you choose to go ahead and accept the responsibility of living it. Talk to me. I'm here for you. And believe me, if you have any problems or anything you want to work with, I can help fix it. I can help make it happen. It's what I do. It's how this whole thing started. I'm very good at that, and I'd love to provide that service. So just contact me. I mean, if you just need a friend, whatever the case, if you want to build something, that's not the point of the video, but I'm here for you. Anyways, so I'm creating that scenario where I've got all these loyal people and shit. Now that in and of itself can be exceptionally detrimental wherever newer people get around to thinking that we're like a cult. Really not understanding that in fact we are anti-cultism. It's like hard set rule one. Alright, hola, welcome back to the future. So, we got cut off in that one. There's a story that I'm not going to tell you because we're out of time, and in fact I might be turning back on my word as regards the jump cut thing and actually going about making use of that ridiculous strategy, being that in fact, yes, we are running out of time. Like, we're just out of time. Although, for the most part, it works out because, again, the time travel aspect is in play, and as I already said, we have indeed already finished most of this. It's done. So again, have faith in the process. I promise you this is going to be fucking cool. We're just setting the stage here. Anyways, watching over what I just did, I've heard this once before, now I see it. It actually does seem, while I'm in that state, as though I might be intoxicated or drunk even. Although I do become kind of empowered as regards my rhetorical faculties, which I just absolutely love. But I assure you I'm not, like, out of it. I'm in that etheric state, but what it is, actually, this etheric state is I become just very acutely aware of everything. In fact, I become acutely aware of everything that's happening deep into the future. There are dominoes in place here that are in fact falling upon each other deep as fuck into a future even beyond what we've already worked with. And it's a task of ours to try to keep that moving in the pattern that it needs to. But I told you guys the reason why I promised that I was going to watch out for everything, make sure that things worked out, is because we are in fact headed for somewhat of a calamity here, and it may very well seem as though there are damages occurring and things getting hurt. We're going to need you guys to step up to the plate and help us handle the challenge. It is in fact a manufactured challenge. Well, some of it isn't. Some we actually have opponents in play that are damaging, but we're trying to prepare you guys to help us handle these issues, and we're very much hoping that you're going to go ahead and do that. I'm having faith in you. I know you'll step up to the plate. The thing is that, if you guys could see what I see, and well, if you guys could see what I see, you'd probably be frightened, actually. So it's definitely a good thing that you don't. Again, my perspective is a difficult one to manage, but we're working on consolidating it, as I said. However, what I was talking about there, the reason why I had said before that I was going to watch out for you guys and that, we're going to be running into these troubles, one of the biggest troubles we already run into is regarding what I had stated about having so many friends and whatnot, and people getting around to saying kind things about me. That's what I was saying, but again, factor one, like priority A, as regards the entirety of our endeavor, is we are combating cultist influence, and people do mistake us for a cultist influence. Ultimately, I think because we're fighting fire with fire, and we're getting around to explaining all this to you guys in as graphic fashion as I'm capable. Like, I'm going to try and pin this all down for you and explain it all over the course of this particular series of stories. But there are going to be videos in between them. It doesn't matter. Never mind. But the thing of it is that there are cultist influences in everything. Like, there's social programming, education in and of itself, the educational system, even science has this cultist influence programming, in it that is effectively programmed into the brains of everybody, and it's informing their decision making in every given moment. Most especially as regards, occurrences or instances wherein people see agencies or organizations specifically dealing with metaphysical, schematics or concepts that are not endorsed by some official, structuring, like a government state faculty. They're not, being propped up by a part of the system and presented as, friendly neighborhood, whatever. If they seem to be, kind of a, I don't know how to say it, like you know, if they seem to be some kind of, even like a revolutionary uprising, I'm supposed to say that. If they seem to be people like us who are popping up in like a grassroots sort of thing or what have you, people will autonomically, or at least their brains will get around to autonomically designating them as a cultist influence. There's a reason for that. It's because of the cultist influence. This indoctrination, what we are combating ultimately overall, you know, cognitive dissonance and indoctrination in and of itself is our only real enemy. It's, again, informing their decision making in such a way as to determine anything that may rise up against the actual cultist influence as being a cultist influence. So they've got the cult telling them to see anybody who stands against the cult as being a cult and to shun them because of it, because that's what cults do. That's the part of the indoctrination, training you to shun anybody who stands against it. And that's the most glaringly evident, like, broad span, you know, just spread out factor of it there ever is, and it's the only one that nobody ever sees. And there's a reason why for that, a reason for everything. You need to be asking, why are we not seeing these things happening? Like, for example, that particularly the reason why people are going to think that when they look at the you know, the page. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate this heavily. I think so high, like, it honors me, it brings tears to the very heart of my soul when I see people posting kind things about me and actually stepping up and saying that they care for me in that way. You know, they'll post things saying like Donovan is this or that, which, by the way, you can go ahead and call me Blue, because I asked you to do that for a reason. There's a value in you using that name for me. It impresses upon anybody who sees it sort of a value informing them in a comfortable or familiar fashion, that we are familiar with each other. You know, that's what it's intended to state, that you would call me by a nickname. It's affectionate, and so I really do want for you to do that, please. Most of you anyways, but also at the same time, though, I so heavily appreciate you guys posting things, like people posting saying he's such a kind person, he does such great things, this and that, you know, all of this kind of, like, just talking me up in a manner of speaking. That's going to be one of the most heavily damaging mistakes that you guys can be making. Please try to refrain from doing that. It makes me feel great to know you care. I love it, but anybody else who sees that, who may be like questionable, you know, questioning of what we're doing, that right there, when they see that, will become the validating evidence that proves to them that in fact this is a cult, because it appears as though you guys might actually be like worshiping me in some respect, which I can assure anybody watching who doesn't know what's going on with us, nobody fucking worships me, believe me. Most of the people hate me, but they respect me enough to follow my lead. There are reasons for that. I've worked hard to create them, but you know, it just kind of comes across as though people are like kind of brainwashed by me, which of course technically you are. But I mean, there are people brainwashing you all over the place. There's brainwashing going on in everything. The only sort of what you could call brainwashing that's going on with the soul casting, as we'll begin calling it now to consolidate terminology, our enterprise and terminology here being fulfilled to some extent. The only like manipulation that I'm putting into play here is as regards, you know, mutually decided objectives. That is to say, I can ask you guys to do something, I can present you with a project or a task, and you can go ahead and agree with me and say, that's fucking awesome, I love that idea, I want to do it, I can do it, I'm down for it totally, but you'll say every time you'll say, I don't have time for it right now, I'm busy with this or that, but I'll get around to it, you know, maybe a few minutes from now, maybe a week from now, doesn't matter when you say, because it'll get around to the next time that I suggest it. And that you'll continue to say that for, you know, days to weeks to months before I have to go about tricking you into doing it. And when I do trick you into doing it, you do it easily, spending on it the time that you always did in fact have available. You do it with a smile on your face, you feel great about having accomplished it, and in fact believe that it was entirely your idea, never even knowing that there was any trickery in play, and you benefit from it enormously. And this, not only is this something that's happening to the negative, like there are players right now who have come into play. In fact, we've dealt with one already. Again, we have to post that video later, but it's happening already, where we're coming across people who are in fact capable of doing this to some extent, be it consciously or not, but are indeed willing to do it to the negative, which brings around the point of all this really is that, as I was saying about you guys messaging me, when you message me, I respond immediately or as fast as I can. If you message me and I do not respond immediately, Liara has shown me what you said. I'm paying attention. Like, I'm paying attention to everything, always. I see what's going on. I know what your message is. If I don't respond immediately, it is not because I haven't seen your message or I'm unaware of it. In some cases, I miss them, and that happens from time to time. But and in some cases, Messenger actually hides them from me. That's bullshit. But I have to go searching for them. Thanks, Liara. But if in fact I do not respond immediately to a message you send me, chances are, like 99% of the time, it's going to be because you have in fact impressed something through that message that is in some way wrong. That is to say, not like not grammatical errors or anything like that. I mean, you have put into play a value through whatever you have said that is potentially harmful to some degree, and can in fact, usually it's going to be something to the effect of you presenting a sort of a decoy, a ploy value unconsciously. People don't know that they're doing this. It's just a force of habit that is intended to resound with a negative feedback so that it can reinforce the whole victimization complex that most everyone does indeed have in play. And that's one of the aspects of how people can go about trying to harm themselves and ultimately wind up harming others, especially people who try to combat the very nature of that habit in and of itself. It becomes a very dangerous situation, and so I have to put a little time and effort into designing a schematic for precisely how I'm going to respond to your message before I do, because that first impression is going to make the world a difference, and it needs to be perfectly designed to kind of put the brakes on, stop that message you've impressed in its tracks and remove the value delicately without you knowing that it's happening. Like a surgical procedure. So, yeah, I'm taking the time to ensure that I am in fact watching out for your well-being and indeed my well-being as well, of course. So, I mean, given that is again one of the examples of how this can go down, and it's the reason why, I mean, as I stated, there's a reason why we don't see these things happening. There's a reason why we deliberately ignore these factors in play, and then how this actually works. There are various reasons, but I mean, as regards to surface layer values, how people are in fact being programmed, being socially programmed, brainwashed in that sense, to ignore these things. There's a very particular reason for that, and it comes down to a very particular community that we happen to be dealing with immediately. Which is how this is all going to play out in a pattern that, never mind, you'll see it happen. But if you stick around, please do stick around. It's going to get bumpy, but it's going to get fun, I promise you. But I mean, the thing of it is that I've never really gotten down to actually, providing any measure of deliberate training as regards soul casting or spot casting, how it works particularly and especially until now, where I've begun to explain this to you, and I intend to explain all of it to you so you can go about making use of it. But it's because we are in fact out of time now. I haven't really gotten around to that as yet because there's a certain measure of training that needs to be applied first, because the fact of the matter is that I don't ever want to come across as though I'm speaking down to anybody. Okay, as I said, I like to always be positive as much as I can to everybody that I communicate with. I try to not be negative, but again, another detriment of that is that when people do upset me, which happens, every few minutes or so, that stacks up in the back of my head, and it in fact begins to reinforce what ultimately amounts to another shard of my identity, which of course the experimental phase was intended to capture and consolidate, achieve a fusion of all of these fractured pieces of my personal identity, which has now effectively backfired and resulted in precisely the opposite. We're going to get to that in the next episode, the next installment of this series anyways. But as regards soul casting overall and my training people in it, and then that training that's involved, again, I don't want to come across as though I am in any way looking down on anybody or speaking ill of anybody. That's not the case. It's that I do care, and I need to be very careful here, because if you did become aware as it stands of precisely what you are actually capable of doing, and how in fact simple and even easy it can become to do it, regardless of what discipline you might have, regardless of how you might feel at the moment, there's going to come a circumstance at some point wherein just that train of thought's going to get in your mind and stick, stating over and over again, if the day keeps going this way, I just might break somebody's face tonight. And you will. You guys will cause damages not only to, you know, people around you, but ultimately to yourself that can be irreparable. And it's not a question of whether you, it's a question of when you will and how much damage you will incur at this point. But we're going to try and we're going to use these actual living hands-on examples to train you guys up on this butt quick and effectively, you know, provide you this utility as best we can. We're going to equip you with this skill set for the sake of combating what other elements do come into play. In the next installment of this, we're going to have already introduced one of them in full form. We're going to show you even like a little battle that we had here, and you can see how it worked out. There's really no winners or losers here, or at least there's no winners. But in the next installment of this, we're going to be introducing some of the so-called villains, as it were, and some of the heroes in this story. And it's going to be a really cool one. We're going to get down deeper with all of this. But I mean, I want to state again as a finale to this one that simple statement that we began most of the story with. When I say it, the dude says, I say I feel hopeless, they give me medicine. Soul Mechanics is here to give you hope. I've been on that hopeless position for quite a while. In fact, at times I'm in that hopeless position. And I can't tell you how damaging the implications are for somebody to suggest that I should take some kind of medicine, or that any of you should go and here's a pill, here's some fix, here's some fucking treatment for that. How ugly and disturbing and crude that is. And we're going to get into why that is in the next installment as well, because that in fact presents one of the greatest enemies in this, one of the greatest villains in this story, the antagonist in most cases, that is in fact just setting us all back far too much to be allowed to go on anymore. We have to step up together and put a stop to some of this shit. And I mean, after you see precisely what it is and what it has been doing, once your eyes are opened and you become somewhat lucid to the state of affairs as it actually stands in ultimate reality, I do believe that you guys are going to be raring to go on it. And of course, we're going to be equipping you with all the utilities that are required to kick its fucking ass into oblivion. Until then, thank you for attending. Kila Salai, Terry Uni Ciari, Namaste.